Okay, slideshow. Last time we stopped around here, but I wanted to review some important information because it was the beginning of our talk about describing some aspects of what was mentioned before by a brother or a sister saying what al-khatt al-Uthmani is, or rasm al-Uthmani. We started talking about describing some aspects or characteristics of this rasm al-Uthmani, basically these skeletal letters that were being scribed by the Sahaba, of course making copies of those exact skeletal letters from the Mushaf Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So we talked about it, these masahif were void of all of these symbols and markings that were not included in the Masahif Uthmaniyya, or what we might find in some modern masahif. Everyone has studied this and answered the quiz excellently. This I did not include in the test because I wanted to give it more time to give my sisters and brothers a chance to think about it and possibly ask questions. So now we're talking about a little bit of details of some characteristics and aspects that were found in these Masahif Uthmani. For example, scholars noted that if there is more than one way, more than one variation in pronouncing a word, and if that could be scribed in one way versus two, scholars noted that it would be scribed in one way in front of the Prophet ﷺ. طبعا preserved through the Mushaf Siddiqi and thus through the Mushaf Uthmani. An example for that is what's pronounced Malik, and the same ayah pronounced Malik. Both of them were scribed using the Mim Lam Kaf. Now, this is something I did not mention last time. Notice that if it could be scribed using one word, this is how it was often written. Often, not always. I don't know if any of you can think of an example where some words had different variations in pronunciation, and one spelling or one word, one representation could have been sufficient, yet they were found scribed in both ways in the Masahif. This is new. This I have not said to anyone before. Not last year, and maybe even Brother Wadia. I don't think I've told this to him. The word al-rih and al-riyah. Al-rih and al-riyah. In almost all of its occurrences in the Quran, there is a variation where it's read either al-rih or al-riyah, except the first occurrence in Surah Al-Rum. In Surah Al-Rum, it's mentioned twice. The second one, it was revealed in both. But the first one, it was revealed only in al-riyah. So representing both words with alif, lam, ra, ya, ha could have been sufficient. Yet it was scribed sometimes with an alif and sometimes without. So it's not a strict rule. So these kind of, the fact that words are often written in one way, but not all the time, this is why we say we must preserve exactly how it was written in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Because we do not know, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the scholars of scribing the Quran and compiling the Quran and Rasm al-Mushaf. Until today, there's not like a rule that all the words follow. Okay, there's always these exceptions and why and perhaps. So that's why the majority of the Ummah agrees that the Rasm al-Mushaf, how these words were scribed, should be exactly copied as is, for the same reason that Umar who was terrified of losing it, because they knew, the Sahaba knew, that how it was scribed was unique, and it should not be up to anyone, not even Sahaba themselves. Like Umar him at the time of Abu Bakr, I think if they had written the Quran from their memories and hearts, I think the Ummah would still have accepted, but they did not accept to write that way. They did not want to write the Quran from their own memory, because they knew that what was written from the Prophet ﷺ and the wahy did not come to change anything, that was in itself had some qudsiyya, had some sacredness, because it was written at the time of the Prophet ﷺ in front of him. So again, these are just some aspects that I'm pointing out. I'm not generalizing, it's just pointing out aspects. And the knowledge, the full knowledge of why is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu a'lam. Another aspect we talked about is if then it was impossible to write these variations using one word. Sometimes it's just impossible, like sari'u and wasari'u. It's impossible to represent the pronunciation wasari'u void of a waw. It must be written both ways. And it's impossible to read sari'u if there's already a waw. So the scholars noted that when there were two variations, the word would be scribed twice. And of course, this was then dispersed among the copies of the Musahif Uthmaniyya versus it was written together in the Mushaf as-Siddiq. I'm not sure, is this, oh yeah, we talked about this. Another variation that's interestingly pronounced one way in general, but was scribed sometimes in different ways. Like Allah could be scribed without a noon or with a noon, depending on, we don't know. Wallahu a'lam. This is how the scholars who study the Rasm al-Uthmani are just pointing out these different aspects. And the Sahaba put a huge care into copying it exactly how it was from the Mushaf as-Siddiqi and that from what was written in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, Brother Wadi'a has a question. I will unmute you. Tafaddalu.
Jazakumullah khairan. This one, this current slide, can this be an example of the seventh harf, which is emitting a letter?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, so these are just different ways the ahruf would come about.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And the other slide about sari'u wa sari'u. So during Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, it would be written sari'u and then on top of it a waw.
According to Sheikh Adil Abu Sha'ar, he says it was either written the word on top of it or bilhamish on the sidelines, and the full word would be written. So sari'u and wasari'u. Wallahu a'lam.
Oh, okay. طيب. Jazakumullah khairan. So it was not possible. It was not impossible to write them in one single mushaf.
No, it was not impossible. They just wrote the same word twice.
Oh, okay. طيب.
Now, so there's a question here from Nurab. Isn't it an example of idgham? Allah, yes. It's an example of idgham being written, how it's pronounced after the idgham occurs. Naam. Okay. We also talked about how the original word sirat is originally with a sin, but it's not found anywhere in the Quran scribed as a sin. Everywhere it's found, whether with al or without, is scribed with a sad, but it's also pronounced with sad sin or a combination between sad and zai. So the scholars are trying to understand why is the word sirat never with a sin in the Quran. It's very, it definitely grabs attention, especially since most of the tribes, Arabian tribes, would pronounce it with a sin. And it's originally, the three roots of this word is sin, ra, ta. Why is it not scribed with a sad? So the ijtihad is because the Quran was revealed with it, pronouncing it as a sin, as a sad, and as a az sound. If it was written in the Quran fully with a sin in all its occurrences, that would give heavy weight to the sin pronunciation and kind of give a disadvantage to the pronunciation of it being sad or a sad with a zai. Because the sad pronunciation or a sad with a zai pronunciation as such, as-sirat, az-zirat, are tribal accents that are less known and not used in a spelling system widely, not by Quraysh. So representing it with a sad gives validation to the sad pronunciation, while not invalidating the seen pronunciation, which is its original form. Now, again, these are scholars coming afterwards, looking at the Quran and trying to understand and comprehend why. But in the end, the true why is Allahu A'lam. Okay, these are just the best ijtihad, the best thoughts of top scholars. Wallahu A'lam. Idgham is not part of ahruf. Yes, idgham in itself, Nurab, in its pronunciation does not change the ahruf. But something I did not mention, but now I have to. There are some oral aspects to idgham that does change. For example, if we're reading from the way of the 10 qira'at today, again, I know that I'm mentioning qira'at, we haven't learned how they developed yet, but that's how the ahruf are preserved. Okay, the ahruf are currently preserved through these 10 qira'at. We'll get to exactly how. These 10 qira'at, in some chains of narration, there is a difference in pronouncing between Allah and the other with a noon. And this is how they would be pronounced. The first Allah without a noon would be pronounced like I'm saying, Allah. The second one with a noon will be pronounced Allah, Allah. So you have the ghunna left over mixed with a lam. So it is a variation where the letter does affect the pronunciation. So this would fall under probably the first aspect, where adding or changing a letter will affect pronunciation. The third pronunciation, Sister Alia, is a sad mixed with a zay, az-zirat, az-zi. Either a heavy zay, or you can think of it as a sad mixed with a zay. Now, basically the z sound, zi, zirat,